Greeting gamers, and welcome to Nothing Venture, Nothing Game. I'm your host with the most, your GM Jared, and today we have a special episode for you all. I'm interviewing co-author, setting designer, Patrick Edward from the anticipated Black Ballad for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, going live March 7th. Greetings, Patrick. How are you today?
I'm great, Jared. How are you?
I'm doing very well myself. Thank you very much for being here with us. So tell us what goes into making this campaign. What started all this?
Oh my gosh, just jumping right into it, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you say what started all this, that's a big question. Should we start specifically with the Black Ballad and maybe work backwards from there, or do you want me to start broader?
What started bringing the Black Ballad together? What was your inspiration for this concept?
Okay. So, let's work backwards. So, the Black Ballad is an upcoming epic, brutal, TTRPG campaign book that the studio I co-founded, Storyteller's Forge, is launching, and it is something of an adaptation of a musical album, a gothic metal album of the same title that's currently in production by the band DiAmorte.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually a story to the album. They do these they're like a gothic metal band, orchestral metal band, and they do these albums and these stories that are like actual operas with a narrative to them, and with this ripping metal tracks and whatnot. So that's what the Black Ballad is, and we'll come back to the specifics of the Black Ballad. As for how did you get there, how are you affiliated with this band, and how are you adapting this? Well, this isn't the first time we've done this. My partner Rick Hines and I, Rick's fiance and our lead editor Court, the three of us co-founded Storyteller's Forge last year. But before that, we'd worked together, and we did this before with a book called The Red Opera. The Red Opera was also and is also still an album and a stage performance by DiAmorte. Drake Mephisto is the lead singer and frontman of DiAmorte. He and Rick are friends. And years ago, Rick soft pitched the idea to Drake, hey, the Red Opera should be an RPG campaign. And at that time, he was thinking of it as more like a one shot, like a splat book, something 2,000 words or something like that, and because I personally, admittedly, am not the biggest metal fan. I appreciate it, but I would never call myself, there's plenty of people, I wouldn't dare disrespect the genre by saying I'm like a fan, because I know people will nail me to the wall if they ever tried to pull my card on that. But Rick is definitely a bona fide metal fan. That's how he's friends with a lot of these people in bands. And so Rick and I knew each other and been friends because we're also both novelists, and both of our first novels have been published by the same publisher. We both are from Chicago originally. He came to my first book signing, and we hit it off and just hung out for most of the day, so that we already knew each other. And so when it came time, Rick was going to maybe just write on his own this little 2,000 word splat book called The Red Opera. And then he's like, this needs to be bigger. I want this to be a thing. And he knew that I, in addition to being a podcaster and a novelist, dabbled in the TTRPG and D&D worlds with a couple of actual plays I've been a cast member of. And he reached out and he said, hey, any interest in kind of a weird, silly little project? The band was going to actually pay us just themselves out of pocket. We're going to write this little thing, throw it into the ether. Who knows? It's probably just going to be a fun little thing we do, and it's not going to be a big deal. Well, for us, it ended up being a big deal because as somebody who, we're literally coming out of thin air with this. It's not like we have a background or worked with an established studio in this space. The Red Opera ended up being this 80 some thousand word tome epic of this original setting and all of these original that really dives deep on warlocks and the nature of warlocks and their pacts with their patrons. And we created all of these original patrons and original subclasses and this original setting and original species. And then we had this ridiculous, brutal 10-chapter epic saga campaign with 4 different endings that you can play based on how the choices the players make. And partner with who had these great artists do some like David Granjo, who is working with us on the Black Ballad again. And it ended up again, we both are published authors and we have our own, little followings in that regard, but we're not at this time, we're not names in the TTRPG space at this point. But it goes to Kickstarter and raises like $170,000, which for us, like coming out of nothing, is for the first go around is crazy, right?
Yeah, that's amazing.
So that went off and we've got tons of really great feedback on that. And I love hearing that. To the point where I'm getting like secondhand people's like, oh, I was talking to this person and they play D&D and they said they were playing the book you co-wrote. And it's just crazy to hear about that, like in the wild, right? Like people, 2-3 people removed from you are like, oh, so-and-so was doing that. They were loving it. And so, and Rick and I just, having written a couple books each on our own, that was one of the first times we worked on something major together. And it was really lucky that collaborating is hard, especially in creative spaces, no matter what type of medium or what you're doing. And we were really fortunate enough to be friends, like fellow colleagues in the writing world, friends. And then we just work really well together. We clicked really well and we sort of complement each other really well when it comes to writing and creating, like as far as strengths and weaknesses, we kind of fit together like Legos and that. And we really, like I said, complement each other. So we just wanted to keep going. And then, the Red Opera was, relatively, for our perspective, a success, and we gained some following and some notoriety. And then there was I don't know how much you're up on this, there was kind of a falling out with a studio that we partnered with to do the printing and some of the art. And I got to be careful with my word choice, but there were some practices done by some that were less than ideal or ethical. And that was not so the Red Opera is kind of in this weird limbo state right now. But in the meantime, Rick and I both were known for doing this, and we both have then worked together and independently on multiple TTRPG publications since then. And we have a bunch of stuff that we've worked on and contributed to in the pipeline. Between the two of us, it's, some of these we've collaborated, we both worked on. Some of us was just one of the two of us, but we're talking, there's something like 7-8 projects, books that we've contributed to that are in the works right now to be released over the next couple of years. And in the course of all of this, we wanted to do our next big one that was like our next big epic campaign book. And we weren't going to partner with the same production studio the first time because that was a nightmare situation. So we decided, and we talked to some other people and we looked at some other options. And then in the course of the fallout from those people that, getting kind of recognized by the community as not being the most, we got a much bigger following. We got a bunch of people like, hey, we're here, we want to support you. So we should just create our own studio. Why do we need to go to someone else? Why do we need to beg for a seat at someone else's table? We're just going to build our own table. So we filed the paperwork and incorporated Storyteller's Forge, and this was going to be our first big project. And we've got a ton of amazing collaborators. And the Black Ballad we knew had to be the thing because the band went back into the studio last summer to record some music for it. And we're like, we're going to do the Black Ballad. It's going to be this ridiculous, dark, but like I bring the whimsy. Rick brings the dark. He brings the dark gothic to it. I bring the little bits of whimsy and silly fun that kind of break up, because you can't just have nothing but like gloom and darkness the whole time, because then it just loses all meaning. You need to have little moments of levity or lightheartedness to kind of break it up. That's usually what I bring to the table because I'm a giant child. So they definitely have to pull me back sometimes. Like, Pat, that's a little too silly for a book about dead people.
I I don't know. Like, one of my favorite movies of all time is Evil Dead and the trilogy of
Mm-hmm.
Evil Dead. I don't know if you're familiar with it,
Mm-hmm.
but they,
Oh yeah.
Sam Raimi introduces like comic into that horror sphere, and I think it works amazing. So, pulling back, I mean, horror and comedy
Oh no,
work
no, no.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Oh no, they do work amazing, but it's a balance, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to go too far one way because then it kind of cheapens the other side of the coin. But so that is a very high level, very summarized, very, very just. I didn't want to be rambling for like because the whole story step by step would take 2 hours by
Yeah.
itself. But that is a very sort of truncated, summarized version of how we got here with our own studio, launching our own big book, The Black Ballad, which we're really excited about just because it's I'm really I know I'm obviously
Yeah.
biased, but am I allowed to swear on the show?
You can.
Jared?
We are a mature rated show. Yes.
Okay. It's fucking awesome, man. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be so much fun. It is. The Black Ballad is about death and resurrection, which is this thing, this thing in TTRPGs that's there. In our opinion, the ramifications of existing in a world, in a universe where resurrection is not only possible, but not too uncommon, is vastly downplayed in a lot of RPG things.
Yeah. I 100% agree
And
with that.
so, especially in what goes hand in hand is a lot of times in these worlds, in these universes, resurrection's a thing, but eternal souls have always have value, especially to the different gods, and like one of the most common reused sort of, and it's okay, we're okay, love a good trope, love a good cliche, but a lot of times a god's power is derived from how many souls it has under its influence and things like that. But can you have that soul under your influence if it doesn't make it to your afterlife, if it gets pulled back with resurrection? And what if they make different choices in their life that lead them to another god's afterlife? And it's kind of like, so I'm getting ahead of myself here. I don't know if you want to dive in, if you had any other questions, but as far as the Black Ballad itself, but as you can tell, I'm
very excited.
I'm a scotch. I'm a little bit passionate and excited about it. Plus, I've got the pre-launch jitters because we're recording this just a few days before we go live on Backer Kit. So
yeah, super excited about seeing the launch. I signed up. Obviously, we signed up. I signed up under my own personal email and then obviously the company email, just because we're probably going to get 2 different copies. I got my own personal one because I don't share. I'm not big into sharing. I was the oldest child, and obviously the company will pick up a separate one. But I do have questions. If you don't mind me asking, I would like to know, because I don't know how much you want to share, right? So you could tell me if like, hey man, we can't really talk about that because, whatever. So I have questions about this whole world. What blew me away, right? First off, how did you come to this? Okay, so before I jump, sorry, I got a million of them. I got them written down.
Yeah.
I'm super excited because it's a really cool concept, and I feel like you guys are the first people to tackle the afterlife in Dungeons and Dragons, and it's so weird because you would assume with how like clerics, warlocks in 5th edition are so prevalent, someone would have touched on this before. And I feel like your company was the first, like, nah, man, we are the first. Like, we got this. We're doing this whole afterlife thing. And that kind of leads into my next segment. So the concept of the game, as I understand it from reading on your webpage and what I've seen, is this picks up after the DM decided to throw Cthulhu and Power Armor at his players or her players because they got too rambunctious. TPK then was like, oh man, I'm so sorry, guys. I don't want to retcon this, but I got this other story that picks up in the afterlife. That's a general summary of it.
That's kind of our one of our taglines is the Black Ballad. It's what happens when the heroes die. Yes, this is the campaign for all you GMs listening right now. This is the campaign you buy and you have on hand when you TPK your players. This is the campaign that comes after that. Or if you have been playing with a group for a very long time, and undoubtedly there have been player character deaths along the way. If you have players with characters who they've, unfortunately for the circumstances of the game they were playing, the character died, permadeath, but maybe that player because didn't feel done. I'm sure you feel that. I'm most people that's really all characters for the most part, at least from my perspective, have a piece of the player in them. There's something a player is, and maybe that's my own neuroses and my own traumas coming up, but like my player, the characters I craft when I'm playing, there's always an element of myself in there, and I'm working through something through that character, right? So if something happens and they die sort of prematurely, like you made a really bad decision, ticked off the wrong NPC or or did some really bad rolls, I totally understand the feeling of, as a player, being like, I wasn't really done with that character. I wasn't really done, embodying that person. So whether it's a TPK or you just have a stable of past characters from your group, this is a chance to keep it going with the group that TPK'd or revisit some of those dead characters. Because yes, this is a campaign where the player characters are dead. It opens with them having just died.
I think that's a really, really interesting concept for a game. I have a few questions. I'm going to hold off on them because I feel like you're going to be like, just look at the book when it comes out. Like, one of my first questions is like, so I'm going to ask it because it didn't bother me, but I asked my coworker and I was like, Steve, man, how would this work? He goes, I don't know. You got to ask him. Like, when he comes on, like you ask him, not me.
Yeah.
So do you think, as the players have passed on and these characters have passed on and they're in the afterlife, obviously you've had to have created a separate system to make second death, like a second death system, right? Because I've played in campaigns, I feel like we've all played in campaigns where the GM just kind of holds everyone's hand and no one dies, right? Like, oh, you hit 0 you get that Pokemon, like everyone screen fades to white and you wake up in the hospital or something. And that makes a campaign, I always felt personally, that makes a campaign feel less. If my character can't, there's no risk. If I'm always going to
stakes.
Yeah. If I'm always plot armor protected, then I can't feel anything for this. Is that something you guys struggled with, like a concept of creating a second, or is there no second, like, after?
No, yes, that is absolutely something. And this is one I got to be a little careful. No, but to your point, 100% yes, this is something. Here's what I'll tell you. There's a whole section of the book. So let's put it with this, when you're doing a book like this, a campaign, it's not just, you don't just dive right in with like chapters 1 and go into the actual narrative part of the campaign. We break up the book, capital B book, that will be the Black Ballad, into books. Sometimes when you're reading a novel, there's like book 1, book 2, it's part of the same book. It's like acts or something. So we have like book 4, we have like 5, we call them books within this tome. And one of them is the whole narrative. And then there's other ones that are like lore building, right? So there's a whole section called Death Among the Dead. And yes, to your point, is we did come up with sort of a system of, we want there to be consequences and stakes if you quote unquote die again in this place, in this plane. And it had to be different, right? It had to be a little bit different than what would happen if you died in the mortal realms and with the saving throws and whatnot. And then, so yes, there's a whole chart and table, and basically you kind of get like 3 where it's like if there's consequences every time if you die in this plane, if your soul quote unquote dies, and it can still be brought, because in this world, in these universes of magic, what is permanence? But there are consequences, and they get worse each time. And that you do not want to die 3 times in this campaign.
So we got the baseball rule.
Are very bad, very, very bad.
Nice.
You do not want. Yeah.
Awesome.
You do not want.
I'm super excited. I'm glad that you've like taken that on. Obviously, I feel like that would have been a challenge to even like come up with. But I like the concept of like, hey man, like first time you come back, you're like you got like the shivers or something, and then third time it's just bad biscuits. Now talking,
and it's something I was saying we give the chances because it's something where players might be. I could see players feeling really cavalier with themselves, like, "Well, I've already died. What can you can just hear it now, right?" The
yeah,
smarmy play, like, "I've already
1,000,000%.
died. What can happen?" And just kind of not worrying about it, and like, so like we knew that we should give a little buffer, but we do want there to be still some consequences. Yeah.
Now I was on the website. You could obviously in the doobly doos down below. We're gonna have the website and all the links to everything. So I was on the website and I checked out the free PDF that you guys had put up, and it talks about the different aspects of the game. You have I'm not too familiar with a lot of the open stuff that has come out with 5th edition, but it seems that we have Valen the Jade, a gargoyle, which I thought was pretty cool. Are you creating extra races for this, or is that just like something that showed up?
A few, and not races in the sense that we're not creating races the way a typical like news source book would create them, where it's here's our new, pick an animal humanoid version of this animal thing. It's more of a a state of existence. Like there's these groups called the Soul Stitched, or these groups called the Unhallowed, and kind of any race can be one of these, but they're their own kind of like subspecies of them. So it has more to do with the nature of their existence.
Yeah.
Not to get too heady, but and you talked about opening OGL. It's very so. D&D is the largest by far, right?
Yeah.
Most players, most people, and that's most of our background. But that being said, we were already trending toward a semi system agnostic way of writing before the drama, and the drama seems to have been walked back. Basically, the book is going to be I'll still call it like semi system agnostic. I would say the shortest walk is going to be 5e.
Yeah.
As far as the shortest walk for adaptation, but it is we're working really hard to make it so it's easily playable in other major systems as well. Where it's more about, we're taking out things that are super specific and finding new ways to describe like challenges and encounters and effects that can happen to the players in ways that are not so system specific, which has actually been kind of fun. I'm one of those writers who a lot of writers like, give me a blank page and get out of my way because I have so many ideas. I'm an artist and I can come up with a million ideas. That's fine. Some are great, some are okay, some are terrible. I'm someone who, because this is my job, right? Like I'm someone who actually kind of thrives with challenge and hurdles in my writing. And I think that's why I've so quickly taken to writing professionally in the gaming world is it has a lot of like parameters you have to meet, a lot of boxes that got to get checked. And so, when you, especially if you want to do like freelance work and you get hired by another company and the project's not your baby, you're a hired gun for them. And we need you to write something that accomplishes A, B, and C while avoids D, E, F, and also accomplishes this. And it has to adhere to the rule set and it has to be done within this many words. You know what I'm saying? And like, there are some people I feel like that would that would kind of be, they would feel stifled by that. I thrive in that. I like that challenge because it really, really forces me to get real creative, right? So it's been kind of a fun, because definitely I felt like I kind of settled into a comfort zone with writing things that are like just 5e. But this has been challenging in a positive way to write something that is 5e adjacent, but so that's the easiest. But also, if you're playing like Pathfinder, you're not going to have to work too hard to play this campaign to tweak it. So that's been something that's been at times frustrating, at times very rewarding.
Of course, it's challenging, but in the end of a good challenge, it's usually a good reward. And I see the system agnostic stuff, and I dig that. I think that's like a really great way to like move stuff in our gaming sphere collectively. I'm one of these people who are like, let's all just hold hands and kumbaya and let's get along. And then you got the other people who are like, not on my watch, and I'm gonna hold the line. But you know, that's a different story for a different day. Not talking about that all day today. I really want to dive into a few things. Now, the way your game, you set it up, characters pass on, you're in the afterworld. How you get there is how you get there. Whether it be by GM fiat of TPK, or like you said, playing characters that haven't yet resolved or you're trying to get them to resolve. I think that's really cool. One of the cooler aspects that like I gravitated towards as a GM was this new system. You can see it, the downloadable sample you have up on your website, and it talks about the tiers of play and the different difficulty settings that you can have in your system as you play, because obviously you guys, like you said, you were talking about the system agnostic, but also, you know, coming from a place of comfort. I like that. I think that's really cool because they get up there in number. So you like, were you thinking of like higher level play? Like, hey man, we got to come in and bring a concept of like, maybe these characters are 12th level. Maybe these characters are 13th level, which, you know, and that's why you have that tier of higher play in there. Is that how did you get to that aspect of this game?
So that's a twofold thing, and I give all credit on that to my partner Rick Hines for making that sort of executive decision that a lot of these things we do, we're going to approach them and like stat them and spec them for higher level adventures and higher level characters and higher level enemies for a couple of reasons. One is there's so few out there. The overwhelming majority, there are very few independent, and there's no like official. They're always, you know, because that's what's whole thing is they need to capture new players with every new release, right? So it's always got to be entry level, you know what I mean? And so there's very few campaigns, modules, source books written that for later game, like for high level characters. And so we always love like, what can we do that's different than everyone else is doing? So that's one aspect of it. Two, though, is we have this philosophy that as a GM, not everyone is going to play this. And if you have players that are lower level, or you want to start this as your campaign with level ones, you can do that. Because here's the thing. We have this, and we have tips throughout the book, but it is so much easier as a GM to pare down an enemy or an encounter than to scale up.
Yes.
It is, because it's one of those things where if you have this like low difficulty creature that you want to use for narrative or role playing purposes, but your players are going to wax them, so you got to figure out how you're going to beef them up. You got to like look at the sheet and like, okay, what do I raise this HP to? What do I raise like their hit? How much damage do they do? And that's a much harder thing to gauge. It's a lot easier to take an enemy that's statted to fight level like 15 characters, and it's like, okay, well this thing has like 4 attacks and it's going to deal like 80 damage on average an attack. Obviously that's going to one hit. My players are only like level 5. Let's scale it. That's a lot easier to look at that and just take away.
Yeah.
And just take, instead of like having to think what you're going to add, just take away until it seems fair. Like reduce them from 4 actions to turn to 2, reduce the damage they're doing from 80 on average to 20 or something. You know, like it's a lot easier to see what's there with all of these abilities or damage numbers and just pull it back to match your player's level than it is to create out of nothing. You know what I mean? Like just add out of nothing.
Yeah. I get that 100% as like the eternal GM. I'm constantly having to come up with like, I like playing with enemies. I think kobolds should be useful at level 1 as they are at level 10. And it's usually easier to just like, you know, take a bigger level monster and then just drag him down sometimes. And it's really fun to do that because you could be like, oh man, I'm going to bring in like, you know, let's say what, like a higher level monster that would wipe your party. But then you're like, nah, they're not going to do like 80 points of damage. They'll do like 15 or something ridiculous, like way easier.
Yeah.
And I
Just
thought that
save it
was
down.
really,
Yeah.
yeah, it's so much easier that way. I really appreciate that view. And I know a lot of like other GMs out there, you know, we do GM chat where we talk to other GMs and they all say the same thing. They're like, it's way easier to take like a high level monster and make it easier than to take like a super silly monster and make it.
And not just in the numbers, but like when you get into different types of abilities, where it's a lot easier to look and be like, okay, well, that spell just inherently is too much. Which they're just not going to do that, but they have all these other abilities. Whereas if you try to scale up, you know, some of the most basic enemies and monsters, a lot of them, all it is like one like melee attack or something. Well, then you got to like what? Then you have to like think. And that's not why you buy modules, to think too hard as a GM.
Yeah.
So and again, that's not like we try to like walk this tightrope of giving you the tools you need to have a fun adventure, but not railroading the GM too hard. So they're not,
Mm-hmm.
so like the GM has a little bit of creative control here as well to make choices, because that's important too, because that's not fun if you're GMing something and you're just like basically you're a narrator and you're
Yeah.
just reading out of a book and you don't get to make any choices as the GM. So we try to find that balance of, but at the same time, if you're paying good money for a high quality book, you don't want it to be like, great, thanks for your money, here's a ton of homework for you. You gotta find that balance. So it's all about, we are very focused in our writing on the storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
That's the word we use, the storyteller, the GM, as opposed to the players, because the GM's the one who's going to be reading all this stuff. So it's more about, yeah, how can we help you make this a good experience for you? Because if honestly, if you're having a good experience, your players are going to have a good experience.
So we talked about kind of like the aspects of gameplay, how you came
Yeah.
here, the concept, which is you're playing in the afterlife. Now, I have to ask, obviously people want to know what are the players. Let's talk about it from the player's perspective. What
Mm.
can they expect in this campaign? What are some of the things to look out for? What are some of the things that they
Yeah.
want to kind of like, oh man, am I just going in as a sorcerer, or is there other things that like will happen? Are there like cool trinkets or stuff like magic items that might like pop up that you could tell
I
me
love that you
about?
use the word. I love that you use the word trinkets, because that is a little inside joke we have. Because I like things like that, like all of them. And Rick as a storyteller has no. He's like he's more focused on like themes of storytelling and emotions and big grandiose plans and machinations. And I love, and he's like, I'll leave, and his words like to me, he's like, I know you love your trinkets, you get to design all them, you're designing all the magic items and populating the world with them. I
Mm-hmm.
don't care about that. So that's funny. That's like an inside thing we do. But yeah, I'll back up, because this will give context to like who the players, like what their experience is going to be, and talk about, because we've like alluded to it, but I love to give a few like high notes on the setting itself, because it is an original setting,
Mm-hmm.
and that, because that informs the players and how, you know, how like what they're going to be going through. So you say afterlife. It is an afterlife, but it's kind of like an afterlife, like a pre-afterlife. So this campaign takes place in a plane of existence called the Sunless Crossing. It is not quite a limbo or purgatory, not quite an afterlife, but we say it exists between life and afterlife, and it is connected to many mortal realms, many mortal planes of existence and worlds, and many, many, many afterlives, heavens, hells, and everything in between. Um, and we talked about at the beginning, because resurrection is a thing that exists in so many of these mortal worlds. So, in kind of the lore we establish, is you would have these bloody, brutal, holy war conflicts between gods and their followers, because I alluded, the scenario I went through, I think at the very beginning we were talking, was like, let's say someone dies, goes to like a quote unquote permanent afterlife, only to have their soul ripped back to the mortal realm by resurrection, and then maybe they live for another 20 years. Well, what if they make choices in those 20 years and change who they are, and then die, and then they end up going to another god's afterlife? Well, that first god probably feels cheated out of a soul, right? And then just kind of rinse and repeat. So the Sunless Crossing was formed. We created this goddess Nixia who sacrifices herself way a long time ago in the past, and her sacrifice creates the plane of the Sunless Crossing. It's this huge field of like waist high, like tall grass and wheat, kind of golden, and there's like gray ash perpetually, slowly raining down from the sky, and basically souls that wind up in the Sunless Crossing are souls that, like, fate, capital F, fate has determined have a high probability of being resurrected. Now that could be within days, it could be within years, but basically if you show up in the Sunless Crossing, it means your soul, like the weaves of fate have determined that your soul has a decent probability of being resurrected at some point within the next century or something. And as such, you are not ready to move on to a permanent afterlife. And or this could be it could be married to that, or it could be independent. Maybe you have some serious unresolved issues you need to work out. So there's a lot of themes of that. I can, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's some non-combat encounters where souls, they're very heavy on role play, where character souls are going to kind of be forced to face themselves or face the lies they might have told them. We all lie to ourselves, right? Like, we have who we are, we have who we think we are, who we want to be, and the lies we tell ourselves about who and they have to kind of come to terms with that, with maybe regrets from their mortal life, or again, misconceptions or delusions they had about themselves, and have to come to terms with that. So there's opportunities for some pretty intense role play to happen here as well, and they're going to go on this journey. But of course, because it wouldn't be interesting if everything was business as usual, it just so happens that while the player characters are having their experience in the Sunless Crossing, things don't go great, and some universe-shaking cataclysmic event erupts, and they have to deal with that. So the status quo gets upended, and the players have to deal with the ramifications of that in this afterlife before the afterlife. Ooh. So that's the Sunless Crossing.
I'm excited. I really dig the artwork. Also, I would
it's gorgeous. Yeah, our artists are best artists. Sorry, other people. Your artists aren't as good as our artists. They're amazing. I'm just being. I have my proud dad hat on.
Oh no! Like, one of the big things I loved about seeing this, like everything you just explained about, like this plane of existence. There's a visual, and I'm a visual person. Like I'm a visual dude. I need visuals. It helps me, because not a writer, so I lack sometimes on my description, right, when I'm running my game. So I just hold up a picture. I'm like, it looks like this, and then this is what. if you look, and people out there, please go check out their website, and check out their launch page. It'll be again in all the descriptions in below, and you could see all the really delicious art, because that's the only way to describe it. It's epic, and it totally leans into this vibe that you guys are creating with this, like, fighting in the afterlife and being part of the afterlife. I have a question, and I maybe if you can't tell me on the air, you gotta tell me after, because if when you go to your website, right, thestorytellersforge.com, and you listen to the narration by Carlos Ferro, is that the last name?
Yeah.
I couldn't who was he just like a narrator? Because like in my head, the character seemed very upset at, like, the deity that gave away the secret to resurrection, and I was like, oh, is this a god? Is this a character we'll meet later on?
So this book is not a sequel. I want to be very clear about that, to Red Opera. But there are some themes in common, and there are some strings, some ties. So, yeah, this is a character that fans of the Red Opera will maybe remember, that sometimes is known as in some circles might be called the Betrayer, or Majin, or a certain shape-shifting tiefling character who they're never seen without their mask in hand, who is no one knows what their deal is quite really, but and why they seem to have such a vested interest in the dealings of gods and mortals. Yeah.
Interesting. I'm excited. I sadly did not play the Red Opera. I am now definitely going to go back to that because I want to see it. I want to experience it. I know it's two separate things, two separate companies, right? But it just sounds awesome. And then this as like its own independent world. I'm super amped. Do I get to kill a god? Is that something I could ask you? Can I?
Maybe.
Oh, give me the maybe. Boo. It's okay. I'm excited. I'm so
Depends on the choices you make. It's all about the choices you make.
No, man. I'm an old school 3.5 third edition D&D player. First thing, you statted out a god, I could go kill that. Being an old gamer like that. Super excited for this. So we talked about the world that you're playing in, this beautiful city of, if I'm saying this properly, I don't want to ruin it. Nox Valar?
Yeah, you got it.
Nox Valar.
Got it in one.
Nice. I'm so I butcher fantasy names, and if you ever listen to like any of my when I'm playing, I'm like, they're like, oh, so who's this halfling? I'm like, Bob.
So let's talk about that, because that's a huge pet peeve of mine though too. Is when you'll see people write, it's like, you just wrote this because it looked weird or fanciful or otherworldly, and as a writer, it's like, you didn't actually sound this out. So I pride myself, I come up with a lot, if not most of our, if not the overall majority of our made up names for like places and people and stuff like that. And if I'm going to give myself a pat on the back, I'm not a perfect writer. No one is, and everyone has strengths and weaknesses. I think I do. One thing I pride myself in is if I have to come up with a proper name for something, a person or a place or a thing, I spend way too much time on it, thinking about it, because I want it to capture the vibe. I want it to sound realistic, like it actually, because you'll see things, people will just throw syllables together for the name of a person or a place, and you're like, did you sound this out to yourself? Like, if this is the name of a character, did you like talk to yourself in the mirror and like say the name, and were you able to do that with a straight face and not crack up, or
Yeah.
So I really put a lot of effort into, if I name a place or a person or something like that, I want it. It's got and it's got to go beyond like the your forefront of your brain. It's got to hit on the subconscious of like, that sounds like a person that actually exists. That sounds like a place that actually exists, and people should be able to read it and pronounce it pretty easily.
You've knocked it out of the park. Like Nox Valar, I was like, okay, I think I'm saying it properly.
Yeah.
It's easy. The every word that I've read in that free PDF you guys have up, it's super easy. Like Valen, easy. Like I understood what I was looking at, and I appreciate that. Just from a person who struggles with reading, I appreciate it. And I always argue. My biggest argument is, I wish companies would put like pronunciation guides next to their fantastical names. Just right. like you said, like, did you really say it, or did you just add a Z there because you thought it would look cool?
And apostrophes, so many apostrophes.
Oh yeah. Just we're gonna put a Z and an apostrophe, and then like end it with a Q, not a QU, just a Q.
Yeah,
just cause. I love it, but I appreciate that. Like I'm saying, like everything in here is super thought out. How long had you been working on this with your co-author? Obviously not like a month. Like it wasn't like, oh, we decided to do this last weekend. Whoop.
Right. No, not a month, but also we really pride ourselves. I would say, again, a thing that Rick and I really gel well on projects that we take on together and is we're workhorses. This is a job, and we turn in our word counts. When we set a deadline, we hit it. You hear all the time about so many like crowdfunding campaigns that take years and years and years to fulfill. We don't go to a campaign unless something is done or will be done very shortly after and go to print. So this is something honestly that was in conceptualized mode in the summer of 2022. So not long, not that, this isn't like
Yeah.
we go. If we decide this is the thing that's going to be the priority project, because both in here working on our third novels, each in our novel series. I'm also a screenwriter. I've got a script I'm working on. We all have stuff, right? And I got small kids and everything, but this is definitely kind of that number one priority. So if we decide that, like, we don't sit back, we get it done. And we just we just go.
Yeah.
And we're like, let's do this, let's go, let's knock this out. And people, you get people that will reach out or want to collaborate, and they seem like nice people, and you kind of give them a shot. And it's like, if you want to collaborate with us, reach out, you want to be involved in a project, do it. But if you get an assignment, do it. You better do it and turn it in. You're not getting, we're really big on, like, get it done.
Yeah.
And so we don't like to mess around. And like when we do this backer kit and we do this crowdfunding and we knock it out of the park, because I know we're going to,
100%.
I promise you, listener, if you take if you pre-order, you're not going to be sitting around on your hands for a year or 2 years with these ridiculous crowdfunding campaigns that are unfulfilled for literally over a year after the campaign, and the money's been collected. They have the money in hand. It's ridiculous. It's no. We want to ship this thing as soon as humanly possible, because we have so much more in the tank. We have so much more. We already have our next 2-3 projects lined up that are coming after this, and we don't feel right like diving in too much in earnest if this thing isn't on pace. So this is something where we are, I'd say, maybe a little faster than average, because we just take it that seriously. We're like, we're going to get this done. People are giving us they're paying us their hard-earned money, they're putting their faith in us. So yeah, this was chalkboard concept last like July, August, and is now like almost fully written.
Yeah.
So, and fully illustrated and all of that. So
I do have to say, it is amazing the quality you have just put up, even just from that like PDF that like you have. I've gone to other Kickstarters and backer stuff, and like what's the other one, the IO page, and you download those free PDFs, and it's kind of like thoughts that they put on paper and then put together. It's not coherent unless you're that person. This is super coherent. The artwork, like I said, all matches and is amazing. By the way, the artwork, shout out to your artwork team. Total reminiscent of like those Led Zeppelin vinyl artwork. Like,
yeah,
it's so boss.
It's not like a metal vibe. I mean, yeah, I'm gonna shout out a couple people. James Masingo is our art director. They're great. They're phenomenal. They've done they've worked on Shadowrun, Borderlands 2 before. They have a great stable of artists that are just doing amazing work, and we're just blown away. And there's nothing as like a writer who I can draw enough to be a danger to myself and others, but I'm not but writing something, putting on page, and then seeing a really, really skilled craftsperson artist take that and like bring it to life and do it exactly kind of how you picture it in your head, and with maybe or what I love even more is when it evokes what I was hoping for, but the artist puts a little spin on their own on it, and I'm like, oh, I wish I thought of that. That's so good. Yes, leave that. And yes, set out. And then I don't know if you've had a chance to watch the animated trailer that we have up on YouTube, Jared.
Yes,
that's David Granjo, who did the art for the Red Opera, and he animated that whole trailer, and it's gorgeous and it's amazing. And he did the like with the book opens and I think it flips upside down because you're going to the afterlife, and it's just like, oh, David, you're a mad genius. Can't say enough about them. We're just really, really fortunate that in the wake of a lot of chaos and turmoil and some struggle, we have found this network and group of wonderful, amazing, delightful people who are also really fucking good at what they do. And it's just, I just love it. I love collaborating with people, and I'm like, you want to make cool shit? Come on board, hop on, hop in the ship. Let's go make some cool shit together. Love it. It's just so cool when you see stuff like start coming together.
No, it's amazing, and especially just hearing like, hey man, this was like a chalkboard idea in 2022, and now it's like a fully like you guys are ready, prepped. Hand on that new launch, just go for it. I don't know how you're holding yourselves together with 3 days. I'm one of those guys who are like, if it's close enough to Christmas, just tell me what you got me, and you guys, you're holding it together real well.
Yeah, it's yeah, that's just, it's all for show. I am a mess on the inside. It's
I personally don't think you have anything to worry about because it looks fantastic. The story is super amazing,
Yeah.
and it invokes so much. As we were talking about, going over the ideas of playing in the afterlife, I have a few characters that I've had pass on in epic ways, and I've had a few players who've had characters, like one character rode a black dragon into a volcano, and I was like, oh, Balin's coming back. Like, that dude's coming back. Like, we're going to get together. We're going to rock on with, like, these awesome characters. And
them and the dragon together.
Yes. You know what's funny?
Like, I don't know if they were like allies or enemies in the scenario, but that'd be really hilarious if they were enemies, but they've had all this time in this like after plane and they become actually good buddies or something.
Like a buddy cop movie with like
we tried to kill each other. That was so long, but we've had time to think. Kind of stuck here. So and actually, you know what? Not a bad guy. It's like, yeah, the dragon ate that whole kingdom, but he's not a bad guy.
It was circumstance. I swear, he's a cool dude. Don't worry about it. By the way, I'm stealing the idea. That's gonna be like it's happening.
It's all yours. Yeah, no, it's something I'm excited to do too. I've got a number of different like promotional things lined up where I'm GMing like one shots and guest sessions, and I've had people, they're emailing me, and some are creating new characters for them, and some are like, oh my gosh, I had this character from this campaign, am I allowed to use them? I'm like, fuck yes you are, let's do that, like bring them back. Yeah, it's just really excited, nervous. The big thing too is like, I want to be very clear to everyone, this is not on Kickstarter. We are on BackerKit. BackerKit has their own, if you've backed a Kickstarter in the past, you're familiar with BackerKit because they fulfill all the orders anyway for them, but BackerKit has their own crowdfunding platform. We made the decision to, pun very much intended here, roll the dice with BackerKit. We think that they are going to be an awesome partner for us, because here's the difference. You have to be approved to do a campaign on BackerKit's platform, and they actually work with you. We have dialogues going with their people behind the scenes. They actually want you to succeed. Kickstarter does not care because they're so big. And that's not a criticism. They don't have to care, right? Like the BackerKit, this is something, as I already told you, we've got multiple projects planned for the next couple of years, and we wanted someone who kind of get on the who's going to be like a partner with us, right? And who like we want to succeed together. So we think long term, because it's a lot easier to get a pledge from somebody who already has like an account set up. We understand the vast majority of the people that end up supporting us, it's going to be their first. They're going to have to, we're asking you to not only support us and pre-order, but set up another email and password on another website, because you probably don't have them, but please do. We know we're going to make it worth your while. And you're supporting a really cool platform that's trying to do crowdfunding for creative types in our opinion, a much better way, a much more above board way, a much more collaborative way, and we want to support that.
100%. We love supporting here at Nothing Ventured, Nothing Game. We are huge proponents of supporting third-party publishers and third-party groups that are going out there and really trying to push the envelope. This isn't a dig on any company, right? But when you get so big, you just become stagnant, and the dope stuff comes from the third-party little dudes. Not that your last.
I know I am. It's fine. It's okay.
I'm not trying to downplay how awesome this stuff is.
No. Yeah.
But really, we really support that, and we're really glad to see what's going on. That's why we were excited. We reached an agreement to have you guys come on and have this chat. Dope. Third-party stuff, always the best stuff. I find third-party stuff always has great stories or really interesting ideas versus the major corporations. So I'm when I was a young man, I was an anarchist. Totally was like down with the establishment, rip it apart. But now, separately, I want to say thank you very much to you.
I got an exclusive for you though. So yeah, if this is coming out on Monday the 6th, and you're watching this or listening to it on Monday the 6th, the 7th, or the 8th, on the 8th, so it's the second day of the campaign. If you go to the Amateurish, it's like amateur with ISH on the end, Amateurish Productions Twitch channel, I am guest GMing with an awesome cast. We're debuting the first chapter of the Black Ballad Wednesday, the 8th in the evening.
Ooh. Well, is there a specific time?
We're shooting, you know how stuff goes,
Yeah.
but we're shooting to go live around 8 p.m. Eastern.
Oh, awesome. Perfect. We are a Eastern group. So
yeah,
that's amazing. So I will make sure I'll touch base with the other gentleman we were emailing back and forth to get all your social stuff so that we can put it up on our Instagram and Twitter so that we can like blast you guys out there. We like I said, we like to help out all the third party people.
I mean, I'll just I'm easy to find because hashtag branding. I am at the Pat Edwards.
Okay.
Everywhere on every platform, Twitter, Instagram, my website's at thepatedwards.com. I have Hive and Mastodon. And
nice.
I'm such a I'll probably get Blue Sky. That's Jack Dorsey's new.
Oh, is that the new thing he put up?
I don't know. I'm such a chronically online person.
I am
TikTok, all of that. But if you're looking for me on whatever platform, if I have a presence, it's under the Pat Edwards.
Pat Edwards. Wonderful. We will make sure to put that up, get that out, make sure everyone knows about it, what's coming up. And I have a question. It's more on away from this topic and more of like and then we'll just do a quick wrap up. So your books were sci-fi based, like a comedy sci-fi, and now you're coming in.
Oh, my novels?
Yeah. Novels. And then you're jumping over into fantasy. Was that kind of like a weird switch, or was it?
No, I mean, not too much. I think most people, you get outliers who really like sci-fi or fantasy and don't care for the other. I think the majority of people, I've always loved both. Sci-fi and fantasy. They've always had. I mean, my Lord of the Rings movies, I rewatch those like every year. I'm obsessed with Lord of the Rings. I actually joke that I might actually do it. I'm gonna have like an unofficial quote unquote stretch goal where if we max out all our stretch goals, I'm gonna finally get my first tattoo and I'll live stream it, and it's gonna have some Lord of the Rings elements. It's gonna be a blend of a couple different properties, but a marrying of fantasy and sci-fi together. So no, this wasn't. I mean, I was already playing D&D and PG, playing those and in real play. So I've always loved both, like pretty equally, sci-fi and fantasy. So writing fantasy wasn't more of was writing for gaming as opposed to writing a script or writing a novel. Is definitely, they're all very different animals. Writing a novel, writing a gaming publication, and writing like a script or a screenplay, those are all very, I always say I have to be focused and I can't pop between them. I have to be this day is dedicated to this. I always joke it's like changing around the printing press in my brain because they're all very different thought processes when you're writing and stuff. So no, I don't think as someone who has always been just a big fan of both genres, I don't no, it was easy to pick up that part, the fantasy side, but I can totally see why that would be for some people. Maybe not, their brain is always wired for one or the other.
No, I thought it was very interesting to see that that lunge, not lunge, but I guess maybe it's the people I hang out with. I have those people who are like, hey, I'm really into Star Trek or Star Wars, and I won't touch the Lord of the Rings stuff. And I'm like, have you seen Star Wars? It's Lord of the Rings, but with laser guns.
That's the whole other conversation. Yeah, the whole thing is is Star Wars sci-fi or Star Wars space fantasy?
Yeah.
But no, I'm pretty eclectic in my nerddom as far as the things I like. I'm pretty all over the board, and I like a little bit. You name a niche or genre, like, or I probably like some property in that. So yeah, I'm pretty. I'm an easy fan to
Yeah.
please. Just make it fun.
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
No, I feel you. I feel you. And yeah, I was just wondering about that. I was like, because it's always I obviously did my research looking into like who am I going to talk to, and I just show up and be like, "Sup, how you doing today?"
No, you definitely have been. I appreciate that. Yeah, you definitely. It's obvious you've done a little homework ahead of time, which is always nice.
Thank you very much. I want to say thank you very much to Patrick Edward for coming on and hanging out with us here today. It was a blast getting to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
No problem. And where can everyone find you if they want to hunt you down and see your other works that you've worked on besides obviously Black Ballad and
Yeah, I am at the Pat Edwards everywhere. Everywhere. Just every social media. My website is the Pat Edwards. Don't forget the S on the end there. .com. But so if you're interested in me and things I got going on, whatever platform you're on, search if I'm there, if I have a presence, it's the Pat Edwards. But more importantly than that, right now in the moment, is you should go to storytellersforge.com, click the link to go to the backer kit landing page. If you're listening to this on the 6th, we go live tomorrow, the 7th, with Black Ballad. You should sign up to get an email notification when we do. If you're listening to this March 7th or later, or watching this, you should go to there'll be a link on the website. I promise you that'll be there. There'll probably be a link in the show notes. You should go support the Black Ballad. We would love you very much for that. It would be it's an epic, one of a kind campaign for your home games.
yes, from what I've seen, we are not sponsored, so I'm going to say this would be a definite good buy for your hard-earned money. And the way it seems, they are excited to get this into your hands, so you won't be waiting a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line. This sounds like it will probably be within the year. So I'm super excited. I'm excited to see everything coming up. I want to see all those stretch goals fulfilled. And from all of us here at Nothing Venture, Nothing Games, I want to say thank you very much, Ken, coming on, hanging out with us. And I want to say thank you very much to everyone listening. And as always, we are Nothing Venture, Nothing Game. We love rolling dice, giving advice with a little bit of that New York spice. Have a good one.